Hello and welcome live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy, and coming up in the next 1 hour. India's President Draupadi Murmu addresses a joint sitting of Parliament at the start of the budget session. Says amidst global uncertainties, India remains a pillar of stability. On the eve of the Union Budget, the Economic Survey says India's real GDP growth is estimated at 6.4% this year and 6.3 to 6.8% the next fiscal. US President Donald Trump posts on social media that the ill-fated chopper in the mid-air collision with a civilian plane over the Potomac River was flying too high. And Team India advances to the final of Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup with a win over England. Well, first up, the budget session of Indian Parliament kicked off today. Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman will present the Union Budget 2025 in the lower house of the Indian Parliament on the 1st of February 2025. Well, the budget session of the Indian Parliament began with much anticipation, setting the stage for crucial discussions on the country's economic future. India's President Draupadi Murmu addressed a joint session of Parliament, outlining her government's achievements and policy vision. Here's a report on what unfolded on the first day of this important session.
The budget session of the Indian Parliament kicked off with both houses coming together for the President's address. In her speech, President Draupadi Murmu highlighted the government's key policies and achievements over the past decade, focusing on economic reforms, social welfare and the upliftment of marginalized sections of the society.
भारत की विकास यात्रा की इस अमृतकाल को आज मेरी सरकार अभूतपूर्व उपलब्धियों के माध्यम से नई ऊर्जा दे रही है। तीसरे कार्यकाल में 3 गुना तेज गति से काम हो रहा है। आज देश बड़े निर्णयों और नीतियों को असाधारण गति से लागू होते देख रहा है और इन निर्णयों में देश की गरीब, मध्यम वर्ग, युवा, महिलाओं, किसानों को सर्वोच्च प्राथमिकता मिली।
She outlined several initiatives that have aimed to improve the livelihoods of the underprivileged, including schemes targeting rural development, education and healthcare. The President emphasized the government's continuous efforts towards making India a $5 trillion economy, driven by innovation, infrastructure development and digital transformation.
मेरी सरकार के 1 दशक के कार्यकाल ने विकसित भारत की यात्रा को नई ऊर्जा दी है। विकसित भारत के विजन में जन भागीदारी का सामूहिक सामर्थ्य है, देश की आर्थिक उन्नति का रोड मैप है, डिजिटल क्रांति के रूप में टेक्नोलॉजी की ताकत है और आधुनिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर आधार भी है।
Following the address, Union Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the Economic Survey of 24-25. The document reviews the performance of the Indian economy over the past year, offering insights into growth trends, fiscal performance, and policy challenges. This year's survey places a strong focus on economic recovery post-pandemic, tackling inflation, and ensuring inclusive growth. The Economic Survey lays the foundation for the Union Budget of 25-26, which will be presented in the Lok Sabha tomorrow. All eyes are now on the Finance Minister as she prepares to unveil the government's financial roadmap for the next fiscal year. The budget session will be held in 2 parts, with the first half continuing until February the 13th. This session is expected to see intense debate on key economic issues, debate on the President's speech, and also some key legislative policies that the Government of India envisions to pass during this session. Bureau Report, DD India.
Earlier, India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi made his opening remarks before the media at the start of the budget session of 2025 at the Parliament's premises today. The PM called on all MPs to contribute to strengthen the vision of a developed India during this budget session. He stressed that this is a golden opportunity for young MPs as their active participation and awareness in the House will allow them to witness the fruits of a developed India.
बजट सत्र में सभी सांसद विकसित भारत को मजबूती देने के लिए अपना योगदान देंगे। विशेष करके जो युवा सांसद है उनके लिए तो सुनहरा अवसर है, क्योंकि वो आज सदन में जितनी जागरूकता, जितनी भागीदारी बढ़ाएंगे और विकसित भारत के जो फल है वो तो उनकी नजर के सामने देखने को मिलने वाले हैं। और इसलिए युवा सांसदों के लिए एक अनमोल अवसर है। साथियों, मैं आशा करता हूं कि हम देश की आशा आकांक्षाओं के इस बजट सत्र में खरे उतरेंगे।
The PM also highlighted that innovation, inclusion and investment have consistently been the foundations of the country's economic roadmap.
तीसरे टर्म में हम मिशन मोड में देश को सर्वांगीण विकास की दिशा में, चाहे वो भौगोलिक रूप से हो, सामाजिक रूप से हो या आर्थिक भिन्न भिन्न स्तर के संदर्भ में हो, हम सर्वांगीण विकास के संकल्प को लेकर के मिशन मोड में आगे बढ़ते जा रहे हैं। इनोवेशन, इंक्लूजन और इन्वेस्टमेंट, ये लगातार हमारे आर्थिक गतिविधि के रोड मैप का आधार रहा है।
And a day ahead of the annual budget, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the economic survey for 2024-25 in both houses of Parliament. Now, it says that India's GDP growth is expected to remain in the 6.3 to 6.8% range for the next financial year, and that measures like deregulation, private sector's contribution to infrastructure development and rationalizing salaries of the workforce in tune with profits apart from a well-calibrated response to artificial intelligence is required to meet India's developed nation goal for 2047.
With your permission, I rise to lay on the table.
India's Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman tabled the economic survey for 2024-25 in both houses of Parliament on Friday. The survey cites strong domestic economic fundamentals, a declining unemployment rate, stable inflation, and the need for further reforms to sustain growth momentum. The survey puts forth a way forward to reinvigorate the internal engines and domestic levers of growth.
We have to raise our game on domestic growth. And how do we do that? There are 4 dimensions to it. One is deregulation for growth, augmenting internal capacities for growth, the role of the private sector in nation building, and doing energy transition the Indian way.
Here are some key takeaways from the economic survey. India's real GDP growth is estimated at 6.4% in FY25, which equates nearly to its decadal average. Real GDP growth in FY26 is expected to grow between 6.3 and 6.8%, keeping in mind the upsides and downsides to growth. Real gross value added, or GVA, is also estimated to grow by 6.4% in FY25. Retail headline inflation has softened from 5.4% in FY24 to 4.9% in April to December of 2024. India's external sector continues to display resilience amidst global uncertainties and headwinds. Overall exports, that's merchandise plus services, grew by 6% year-on-year in the first 9 months of FY25. Gross FDI inflows recorded a revival in FY25, increasing from US dollars $47.2 billion in the first 8 months of FY24 to US dollars $55.6 billion in the same period of FY25. The economic survey showed India's forex reserves were at a high of $706 billion in September of 2024 and stood at $640.3 billion by December 27, 2024. As per the World Bank, India was the top recipient of remittances in the world, driven by an uptick in job creation in OECD economies. Industrial sector expected to grow by 6.2% in FY25, driven by robust growth in electricity and construction. India's economy benefits from money sent home by Indians working abroad. Remittances grew by $28.1 billion in Q2 FY24 to $31.9 billion in Q2 FY25. Indian labor market indicators have improved, with unemployment rate declining to 3.2% in 2023-24, July to June, from 6.0% in 2017-18. Rupees 50,000 crore Self-Reliant India Fund launched to provide equity funding to MSMEs.
Private sector plays a very big role. And in terms of the private sector, the specific asks are balanced deployment of capital and labor, curbing ultra-processed foods, fairer distribution of income, importance to workplace safety, workplace culture and mental health, and thinking about supply and sourcing from a strategic perspective as well.
The economic survey of 2024-25 has come within a short span of 6 months from the last one, which was presented in July of 2024 after the general election. The economic survey document, prepared by the Finance Ministry and formulated under the supervision of the Chief Economic Advisor, gives insights into the state of the economy and various indicators of 2024-25 April to March, and some outlook also for the next fiscal. Dheeraj Das's report for DD India.
And despite global uncertainties, a majority of industry leaders have expressed confidence in India's growth outlook after the tabling of the economic survey. Take a look.
Industry stakeholders have welcomed the economic survey, particularly its optimistic growth projections for sectors like manufacturing and real estate.
One priority is to create more domestic capacity. If we don't do that, then we basically become dependent on the imports. Second is greening of steel. As the world moves to less carbon emission, our industry will have to move, means there is no option. Third is, and which is related to the first priority, is keeping our domestic industry competitive.
The survey emphasizes technological advancements and reforms aimed at improving the ease of doing business, which are expected to play a pivotal role in driving India's growth in the upcoming fiscal year. Industry leaders are optimistic, anticipating a growth-oriented budget.
What we would really look at is a focus on growth, because growth will be, as you began by asking as to how fast we can move on the growth rate. I think a tremendous focus on growth would help us navigate through many global challenges that are ahead.
The Economic Survey 24-25 presents a cautiously optimistic outlook for the Indian economy. The survey highlights strong sectoral performances, particularly in industry, about 9.5% growth, and services 55% GDP share, alongside improved banking stability with low NPAs and robust credit expansion.
A majority of industry leaders have praised the survey's growth projection of 6.4% for the financial year 2025. This growth is expected to be fueled by technological advancements and the strengthening of domestic policies.
There are 2-3 very critical areas, where we would like the government to focus. As what they have been doing in the past is the focus on the capex. So our recommendation is to continue with that, and we have recommended to increase the capex by 15%. So that's there because it has a multiplier effect on the economy.
As government gears up to present the budget on February 1, expectations are high, with a special focus on inclusive growth, robust industrial development and stability in areas like inflation, fiscal health and external sector balance. Tripti Tripathi reporting for DD India.
Let's now talk about budget expectations, where the media and entertainment sector, comprising films, music and gaming industries, have been evolving rapidly in India. Now, stakeholders have several expectations from the union budget to drive growth, innovation and global competitiveness.
The media and entertainment industry is expecting several key measures from the union budget, which primarily includes tax benefits and incentives. Harinder Singh, Chairman and Managing Director of Percept Limited and founder of Sunburn Festival, highlights Prime Minister Narendra Modi's emphasis on India's expanding concert economy and underscores the need for government recognition of its economic impact. He advocates for tax exemptions or rebates, which could provide a significant boost to the industry, fostering further growth and investments in live events.
Concert economy is all about the economic change that a big ticket concert, a big event creates. Large scale employment, big boost to the travel, transport sector, F&B sector, retail sector. It basically contributes to the economy in many ways. Honorable Prime Minister has recognized this and and appreciated this, and in fact encouraged this kind of concert economy to be promoted, and so on and so forth.
Munjal Shroff, co-founder of Graffiti Studios and co-chair of the FICCI AVGCXR Forum, anticipates a rationalization of GST for the audiovisual sectors. He emphasizes the critical need for investments in both skilling and upskilling initiatives, addressing service and production segments of the industry.
To focus on Create in India and promote original production in India, promote producing original animation shows, original games from India. We need to look at rationalizing GST for the AV sectors. I think there's a tremendous need to look at that sector as well. And obviously skilling again for both these aspects, whether it's services or original productions. We need to continue to invest in skilling and upskilling our workforce.
The industry also expects stricter laws against piracy, particularly for the online content. The entertainment, music, film and gaming industries are poised for tremendous growth, and a supportive taxation structure, policy clarity and infrastructure incentives from the union budget could help India emerge as a global powerhouse in media and entertainment. Shama Mishra for DD India.
And still to come on DD India NewsHour. The External Affairs Ministry says India is working with the US to schedule Prime Minister Modi's visit to meet President Trump in America. Myanmar's junta extends the national emergency by 6 months with plans to hold elections later this year.
Complex issues, hidden agendas, twists and turns, strategic games. We think all dots are linked. We just need to connect them. Join me every week as I connect the dots to unravel hidden designs in statecraft, mysteries, and decode issues that matter to you. Watch Connecting the Dots with me at these times on DD India.
You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy. And let's talk about budget expectations a little bit more. Well, like other states, people in Kerala too have certain expectations from the budget to be presented on Saturday. Take a look.
The state, which is trying to bet big on port-led development and innovation apart from its traditional sectors, is pinning its hope from the union budget on multiple fronts.
Kerala, which is trying to bet big on port-led development and innovation in addition to its traditional sectors like plantation, expects support in varied sectors. Kerala's rubber farmers are wishing for some incentives to support the rubber prices.
So we expect the Central Finance Minister to introduce some help for the rubber farming of this farming community of the state.
Optimism among Kerala's budding startup entrepreneurs is for infrastructural support in emerging technologies and for creating risk capitals for startup firms.
I would like to see forward as like increasing some kind of risk capital, bringing so that it would be really supportive for startups to be scaled up.
Seafood exporters are expecting additional incentives to gain further competitiveness in international market in view of raw material shortage and international logistic costs.
So we request the government to subsidize the boat fishermen for their fuel, so that there will be more, there are more chances of getting material, because most of the fishermen are not going out for fishing because of the huge expenditure.
From among the students and academic community, their hope is for reduction in the entry age for PM internship schemes.
Some other suggestion is the eligibility criteria for PM internship program is from 21 years. We have requested the government to reduce the eligibility criteria to 18 years so that the school students can also make use of it.
Financial experts and chartered accountants are anticipating some populist measures in the direct tax systems. Ranjit Karthikeyan, veteran CA, expects some big announcements in thrust areas like artificial intelligence.
My concentration will be in the fiscal arena, the budget allocation, and the thrust areas, where especially when you are talking about a new administration in the United States, what collaboration can be done, and the trade which we can do, and how we can possibly look at the AI, which is a great area of interest for the entire globe.
From rubber farmers to marine sector, from innovation to state finances, everyone is looking forward to February 1st with great anticipation. This is Ajay Joy from Trivandrum for DD News.
Now, the spokesperson for India's Ministry of External Affairs on Friday said Prime Minister Narendra Modi and US President Donald Trump had a telephonic conversation recently, and the two sides are working on an early visit for Prime Minister Modi to the US.
Prime Minister and President Trump had a telephone conversation some days back recently. The two sides are working on an early visit of the Prime Minister to the United States to further deepen India-US comprehensive global strategic partnership, and specific dates for this visit are still being worked out and will be announced at the appropriate time.
And on a US top court declining Mumbai terror attack accused the Habbu Rana's appeal, the MEA spokesperson said that India is working with the US on procedural issues for an early extradition of Rana to India.
On 21st of January, the US Supreme Court declined a petition from the accused. With that, all roads, it looks that his appeal in the matter has been dismissed. We are now working with the US side on procedural issues for early extradition to India of the accused in the Mumbai terror attack.
And the MEA spokesperson also informed that DG level talks between India's Border Security Force and Border Guard Bangladesh are scheduled from the 17th to the 20th of February in New Delhi, during which border-related issues are set to be taken up. Now, US President Donald Trump has said on Friday that the Army Black Hawk helicopter that collided with a regional passenger jet in Washington, D.C. was flying too high at the time of the accident in what appears to be a major disclosure about the investigation. The horrifying mid-air collision has left no survivors, killing all 67 people on board both the aircraft. Investigators are now piecing together what went wrong in the deadliest US air disaster since 2009.
Thank you.
US President Donald Trump stated on Friday that the Army Black Hawk helicopter involved in the collision with a regional passenger jet over Washington, D.C. was flying above 200 feet at the time of the crash, a significant revelation in the ongoing investigation. Military helicopters, including the Black Hawk, commonly follow a route over the Potomac River near Ronald Reagan Washington National Airport, known as Route 4. For safety purposes, flights along this route are typically restricted to a maximum altitude of 200 feet. A fireball erupted in the night sky, and within seconds, American Airlines regional passenger jet with 64 people on board collided with a US Army Black Hawk helicopter carrying 3 people and crashed into the Potomac River near Reagan Washington National Airport early on Thursday. There are no likely survivors from the deadly crash. President Donald Trump has blamed diversity and inclusion policies for the disaster.
I do want to point out that various articles that appeared
prior to my entering office, and here's one. The FAA's diversity push includes focus on hiring people with severe intellectual and psychiatric disabilities. That is amazing. And then it says FAA says people with severe disabilities are most underrepresented segment of the workforce, and they want them in, and they want them, they can be air traffic controllers. I don't think so. This was in January 14th, so that was a week before I entered office. They put a big push to put diversity into the FAA's program.
Pete Buttigieg, who served as the transportation secretary under former President Joe Biden, fired back, calling Trump's comments despicable. Rescue teams worked through darkness and near freezing temperatures, pulling 40 bodies from the wreckage by Thursday evening, in what officials say is now a recovery mission and not a rescue operation. Jennifer Homendy, the chairwoman of the National Transportation Safety Board, has requested some time to verify the information regarding the incident.
It's not that we don't have information. We do have information. We have data. We have substantial amounts of information. We need to verify information. We need to take our time to make sure it is accurate. So what I'm going to say is you need to give us time.
India's Prime Minister Narendra Modi expressed grief over the loss of lives, saying India stands in solidarity with the US. The crash is the first major aviation disaster in the US since 2009. With no survivors, investigators are now focused on analyzing the recovered black boxes. Bureau Report, DD India.
In the Middle East, the Hamas has released the names of the hostages to be freed in the fourth round of the Israeli-Hamas prisoners exchange, scheduled for Saturday. The third round concluded with the release of Israeli and Thai hostages, while Israel freed 110 Palestinian prisoners. Meanwhile, tensions are rising at the Rafah crossing as the Gaza-Egypt border is set to reopen on Saturday. Egypt has expressed opposition to the proposed relocation of Palestinians into its territory. Myanmar's ruling junta has extended a state of emergency by 6 months on Friday as it plans to hold elections this year. The extension comes a day before the 4-year anniversary of a coup that triggered civil war and claimed thousands of lives. The ruling military council, headed by Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing, unanimously approved the extension without disclosing the exact dates of the elections. However, the critics have derided the elections as a sham, saying that any election held under the auspices of the junta will be neither free nor fair. On the 1st of February 2021, the military junta seized power in a coup ousting the elected government of Aung San Suu Kyi. It has extended the state of emergency multiple times since then as it battles established ethnic minority armed groups and newer pro-democracy People's Defense Forces. The Swiss government is ending its development aid programs for Bangladesh, Albania and Zambia. This decision comes after the parliament allocated less funding for foreign aid in December than the government had requested. The Federal Council, Switzerland's executive body, was informed of the budget cuts earlier this week. In response, the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation, the SDC, will phase out its bilateral development programs in Albania, Bangladesh and Zambia by the end of 2028. According to the statement, between 2025 and 2028, additional reductions will be made to the country and thematic programs and organizations. However, funding for humanitarian aid, peace building and assistance to Ukraine will remain unchanged. Bangladesh Foreign Secretary Mohammad Jassim Uddin on Thursday expressed concern over the challenges Bangladesh has been facing since hosting the Rohingyas and the declining funds from international donors. He hoped that the upcoming high-level conference in the UN on the situation of Rohingya Muslims and other minorities in Myanmar will draw global attention and garner support for assisting this distressed community, according to a press release issued by the Foreign Ministry. The issues were discussed when United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, Regional Director for Asia and the Pacific, Hai Kyung-chun, thanked Bangladesh for generously hosting over 1 million Rohingyas in her meeting with the Foreign Secretary in Dhaka. While briefing about the support provided by UNHCR, Bangladesh has hosted over 1 million Rohingya Muslims from Myanmar as refugees in Cox's Bazar and Bhasan Char since 2017. Headline inflation in Sri Lanka has dropped to -4% in January. The year-on-year inflation was recorded at -1.7% in December. According to data released by Sri Lanka's Department of Census and Statistics, inflation has remained in negative territory for 5 months. Non-food inflation has dropped -4.7%, while food inflation has been recorded at -2.6%. Earlier on Wednesday, Central Bank, in its first monetary policy review of 2025, had said that inflation is expected to remain in the negative territory for a few months before moving towards the targeted range of 3 to 5%. And still to come on DD India NewsHour. We'll be speaking with our expert guest on what kind of indications does the economic survey provide to India's annual budget that is coming in on Saturday. And we'll also be joined by India's Chief Economic Advisor, V. Anant Nageswaran, a little later on the show to talk about the economic survey that he's authored and the upcoming budget.
Timeless, boundless, and infinite. The essence of faith, the soul of Sanatan culture. From the sacred confluence of Prayag, where divinity descends to earth. Witness the grandeur, the devotion, the magic. World's largest cultural and spiritual gathering, with over 450 million devotees expected to attend. Mahakumbh, India's greatest festival of faith. Exclusively on DD India.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India NewsHour. I'm Gautam Roy, and now it's time to talk about the union budget, which is to be presented in Parliament in the lower house on Saturday, which is tomorrow. And today we've had the economic survey as well coming in, suggesting the steps that could be taken to ensure that India stays on the path that makes it a developed nation by 2047. To talk about it, we have Rajat Kathuria joining us, senior economist. Good evening to you. Mr. Kathuria, what do you make of the economic survey in terms of the kind of broad picture that is painted about the economy in the face of certain global headwinds, the fragmentation that has been talked about there, and the kind of path that India wants to chart out for itself for 2047 when we celebrate 100 years of independence?
Right. Thank you. So I think what the economic survey has said, as you rightly mentioned, that there are several sort of uncertainties, there are some known unknowns that are facing the global economy. So there are global headwinds, including the recent election of President Trump and his sort of statements on what he's going to do in the international economy, i.e., raise tariffs. He hasn't raised tariffs immediately, but the threat of increasing tariffs, and thereby there being some amount of sort of reduction or stalling of international trade. So that's clearly one global headwind that we face. And remember that India is at a time when we want to take off, get on to a growth rate which is higher than 6.4%, which we expect this year, and next year we are expecting about 6.8%. So when we are planning to actually become Viksit by 2047, we'll have to have much higher growth rates in the future, 7 to 8%, and perhaps even touching 10%. Remember that China, for about 30 years, had grown persistently at double-digit levels, and therefore it has been able to reach the per capita incomes and spread development across the country. We probably won't get 10% for 3 decades, but we need 8 to 9% in the future. And for that, we need a sort of much more stable and open and permissive global environment. And that is a grave challenge that India faces. So, for growth, we'll have to have a benign international environment, which we'll have to play a role in trying to price open for ourselves. So that is one realistic headwind, and I think the economic survey talks about it. The other sort of challenge is what we face at home, which probably the finance minister is going to speak about tomorrow, which is how do you achieve fiscal consolidation in the future? Fiscal consolidation, we've achieved. This government has done a good job in trying to rein in the fiscal deficit, but fiscal consolidation could come at the cost of either reduction of government expenditure in the form of revenue or reduction of government expenditure in the form of capex. And I think what the government has been able to do successfully is achieve fiscal consolidation, but the cost, as I said, has come in the form of reducing capex and reducing its revenue expenditure. And this is because we had elections last year, we had a general election, and some of the expenditures could not be made. But in the future, the government will have to continue to play the role of a facilitator, therefore increase investment so that eventually private corporate investment can play the role that it played in post-1991. Remember, your viewers of that vintage will remember that post-1991, the takeoff that happened in India was primarily on the back of private investment, where government investment played a facilitating role, but we have to get back private investment.
And that is not happening to the extent that is desirable. That has been pointed out not just by the Chief Economic Advisor, who will be joining us a little while later on the show itself, but also by many others, including the Finance Minister herself on previous occasions. Why isn't that happening, and what needs to be done to ensure that it does indeed happen, not just private sector joining in on the capex front, but on other fronts as well, which have been also highlighted in the economic survey?
Right. So investment in increasing investment by the private sector will give a push, but that is a supply side effect. We also need to have demand side effects, which means that we'll need the rural sector to do well. We'll need agriculture to do well. And in the past, fortunately, the rural sector has been doing well. And, in fact, rural demand has been a savior in the last year, and it has done well. But I think India's biggest problem in creating a demand push is that we need to be able to create those productive jobs in the manufacturing sector. In the services sector, where many of our jobs are concentrated, very few of those jobs are actually formal jobs. Because the services sector has been able to create a large number of jobs, but they are pretty much in the informal sector, and they're not very productive jobs. They're informal jobs, they're jobs in the gig economy, etc. But they're not the kind of jobs that China or Korea or Japan before us had created in the manufacturing sector. A lot of people say that might be difficult for India, given that there is technology that is replacing people. There's automation that is happening. AI is coming in. That may not. So that is another challenge that we face. But to be able to create sort of a consumption-led economy, we'll have to do much more than provide, benefit transfers to people. And rural demand, as I said, has come in as some sort of a savior.
Yes, there's been a lot of talk of late of bringing the middle class on board, which has kind of been pinching pennies of late because of a lot of factors that we can't really blame it for, and also the rupee-dollar equation. Some concern about that as well, although nothing about it has been mentioned in the economic survey.
Of course, these are concerns. A widening trade deficit and a strengthening dollar means that the rupee is going to depreciate. But also, as you rightly said, you'll need to shore up the middle class. You'll have to, and one way to do that, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. One way to do that is to give them more money in their hands so they can consume more. Remember what happened post-pandemic was there was a surge in demand because there were a lot of savings. There was a pent-up demand that eventually happened. The effect of the pandemic surge in pandemic-induced surge in demands due to the money that couldn't be spent then, I think has now petered out. So they will need to be middle class will need to be given some sort of benefit so that they can begin to spend, so that the investments that we make in India can actually find a market. In case the market, and we'll have to find markets not only in India, but as I was saying in the beginning, we'll have to find markets abroad as well. And given that export markets are a challenge today, we'll have to become much more competitive. So, India faces multiple challenges: becoming competitive, getting jobs in the manufacturing sector so that the middle class can actually boom, middle class to be given more money in their hands so they can spend, so that the investments that are happening in the country can actually find a market in India. And over time, and one of the good things that the economic survey has mentioned is that as India transitions to a developed nation or Viksit Bharat over time, then I think the role of the private sector will become much more important, and the government will probably play a sort of a secondary, not a secondary role, but the government will become a facilitator. But when the private sector becomes even more ascendant in the economy, you will need the government to play the role of a regulator. And one of the good things that the economic survey has said, I haven't read the entire document, but one of the things that it has said is that we need to begin to do regulatory impact assessment. And I think what is the impact that our regulations have? And in general, I think that's a very good idea, because one of the constraints that we face often in India is, doing business indicators. So there are huge number of regulations and they are costly. They are a drag on the economy. And we've seen this in the doing business indicators. India is moving up in the doing business rank. But this idea, of course, the regulatory impact assessment idea is a much broader idea. But if you bring it down, if you drill it down to the doing business feature of the economy, then what we are saying is that, every regulation that we make in India, whether it is RBI, whether it is SEBI, whether it is the gas regulatory or the telecom regulatory authority of India, whatever regulations happen, those regulations should be subject to impact assessment so that we know, are those regulations doing the work or not? In India, we don't have this characteristic of regulatory impacts. And I think that's a good idea. It's pretty much, as I'm saying, that at the ground level, the grassroots level, what is the impact of all those clearances that manufacturing companies need to get, labor clearances, land clearances, environment clearances, all of those, if they're not done efficiently, if those clearances or those regulations are not consistently implemented, then they become a drag on the economy. Similarly, regulation by RBI, regulation by SEBI, and the big regulators that we have, and when the market becomes dominant, it is these regulators then that will begin to make that subordinate legislation, which will have an impact on the economy. So I think it's good that the economic survey talks about it. Okay. Better late than never, and I think that's the good news in the economic survey. But there's a lot of sort of challenges that the economic survey speaks about, including the challenges that India is going to face as a result.
How much of those challenges do you think, I'm sure the finance minister is conscious of, but will she be taking steps to sort of take on and then work towards ensuring that India returns to the high growth path which it requires to become a developed nation by 2047?
It's going to be a tightrope walk for the finance minister. There's no doubt about it. It's going to be a tightrope walk. I mean, on the one hand, you want to have fiscal consolidation, but on the other hand, you don't want to go down the route of austerity too much, because if private sector investment is not picking up, the private sector is not doing what it is supposed to do, then the government has to step in. So in the medium term, in the short term, I guess the degrees of freedom for the finance minister are going to be limited. How much can you continue to tax a very small sort of base of your population? India, we often complain, and if you look at the popular media, let alone the scholarly articles, but just look at the popular media, the feeling is that there is a certain class of people that continues to be taxed, and there are all kinds of taxes put on them. But there's a large chunk of population that doesn't pay tax, and I'm going to sort of begin to talk about
direct taxes, yes,
agricultural taxes. the government should think about agricultural tax. It's not that you're going to tax the poor, farmer, but there are a lot of people who make significant amounts of money through agriculture. It's income. But agriculture has been left out because it's been treated differently. But I think time has come when at least you can begin, the finance minister and the finance ministry can begin a dialogue on whether it's efficient to have a tax on income. But otherwise,
see if the government is willing to bite that big caliber bullet of taxing agriculture at any level.
The other thing I would suggest is, widen the tax base. There are lots of reports that the government has, making the tax administration more friendly, making the tax administration a little more efficient. The cost of paying taxes in India is not small. What economists call the compliance cost of paying taxes in India is not small. And now that we are 4 years away from the pandemic, the government has come in with a third time mandate, and this is the first full-time budget, full year budget that the finance minister is going to place. Then I think this could be a time to make some tough decisions. If not immediately, at least set out the path for the medium-term fiscal policy, so that some of these tough decisions can be taken.
Okay, we don't have to wait too long to find out. Just about a little over more than 12 hours to go for that. Thank you so much, Joy, for joining us, Rajat Kathuria, and talking about it till that happens.
Thank you. Thank you.
Now, India's Defence Minister Rajnath Singh has called upon the chartered accountants of the country to evolve into strategic advisors, ethical guardians and innovators in order to stay relevant in the present dynamic and technology-driven environment. Addressing the inaugural session of the World Forum of Accountants organized by the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in New Delhi on Friday, the minister termed new set of skills including critical thinking, emotional intelligence and adaptability as an essential requirement in today's times. The theme of the three-day event is Accountability Meets Innovation, that's AI for a Sustainable Planet. It aims to deliberate upon a number of themes, including the future of finance and accounting, accountancy as a catalyst for sustainable development, accountants as business advisors, among others. Now, following the unfortunate stampede at the Sangam Nose, Uttar Pradesh Police has taken many corrective measures to ensure crowd control, use of technology to prevent overcrowding at the Mahakumbh Mela. In an exclusive conversation with DD India's Smita Mishra, DGP Uttar Pradesh, Prashant Kumar spoke about the preparations for the remaining Amrit Snan and the Mela.
This time we are taking proper care. More people, security personnel will be deployed, and we will try to, and our access control will also be better this time, so that only limited number of people can enter in a restricted area. And for that, we will do the crowd density analysis through our drone and the CCTV cameras which are there in the Mela area. We have already announced that no VIP should visit on any Amrit Snan day.
Okay.
And looking at this incident, we have cancelled all the passes, and we are trying to enforce it.
Now it's time to get you some sporting updates as well. Now, defending champions India secured their place in the final of the ICC Under-19 Women's T20 World Cup with a 9-wicket win over England in the semi-final at Kuala Lumpur on Friday. England got off to a strong start, but India's bowlers turned the game around, restricting them to 113 in their stipulated 20 overs. In response, India made light work of the chase, reaching the target in just 19 overs to book their place in the second successive final of the tournament. India got off to a stellar start, racing to 44 runs in the power play without losing a wicket. Kamalini Gunalan scored an unbeaten 56 to take her side home. And in the other semi-final, South Africa advanced to the final following an impressive 5-wicket victory over Australia in Kuala Lumpur. The Proteas restricted Australia to just 105 runs for the loss of 8 wickets and cruised past that target with 11 deliveries remaining. They were helped by some excellent batting from Gemma Botha and Kyla Reneke. South Africa will square off with India in the final on Sunday. The Strachi Rar Bengal Tigers booked their place in the final of the Hockey India League after beating the Tamil Nadu Dragons in penalty shootouts in Rourkela on Friday. In a thrilling match, Bengal Tigers came back from a goal down twice before forcing a penalty shootout. Pradeep Singh Sandhu and Sam Lane scored for the Bengal Tigers, while Nathan Ephroms and Selvam Karthi scored for the Dragons. Both the sides gave their all in the hunt for a winner, but the match went into penalty shootout. The Tigers and the Dragons both missed 2 attempts each from their first 4 attempts. Uttam Singh missed his attempt as Tigers advanced to the final. Haryana men and Odisha's women's rugby 7 teams have completed their hat-trick of National Games gold medals in Dehradun on Friday. Haryana beat Maharashtra 22-7 in the men's finals. They dominated the match from the word go. Maharashtra tried gamely to challenge the dominant team, but Haryana stepped up the pressure to beat Maharashtra for the 3rd successive time in the National Games final. While the Odisha women's rugby team defeated Bihar 29-5 in the final. Odisha posted its most authoritative win in the final, surpassing the 22-0 victory over Maharashtra in 2022. Bihar were unable to make any impression. And Narmada Nitin defeated Olympian Ramita Jindal and Eravinil Valarvin to win the gold in the women's 10-meter air rifle at the 38th National Games in Dehradun. She set a national record, missing the world mark by a fraction. In an exclusive chat with DD India, she praised the Dehradun shooting range facilities.
The National Games of India are giving a platform for athletes to showcase their talent in shooting. It was an intense battle in the 10-meter air rifle event, and right now I am joined by the gold medalist of the event, Narmada. Narmada, very warm welcome. Definitely it was a cracker of the competition. Tough shooters were there, you were also there, and finally won the gold medal. Share your experience with us during the tough battle with the players.
As you said, it was a tough battle, very tough battle. It was like going to a war or something like that. But yeah, we all trained together, all the top athletes, we trained together. So it was like that only. But then when it comes to competition, the pressure is always high. I'm sure we all had the same pressure. I just thought that it's okay. A little pressure is fine. You just have to, let go, take a deep breathe in and let it all out. I just did what I always did. So it's how I practiced. I had visualized this and I think I manifested this.
So what's your opinion about the national game, the kind of exposure the games are giving to athletes?
So when I was in this competition, I saw many new faces and many old faces also. I can see that this is how the path is, and I can see everyone working hard. They all want to achieve what I did today, and even I have my own goals which I want to achieve. So it is like telling me that you shouldn't give up, you should go forward more. There is window of many opportunities and more to learn and more to do also.
So national games are a source of motivation for athletes and they are getting inspired by each other, and definitely it's a big exposure for our athletes, for our shooters and all the participants who are here at the national games. With camera person Manmohan, Narayan Singh, DD India, Dehradun.
Olympic shooter Ramita Jindal clinched the bronze medal in the 10-meter air rifle event at the National Games in Dehradun. In an exclusive conversation with DD India's Narayan, she highlighted the intense level of competition at the Games.
India's top-notch shooters are participating here in Uttarakhand in the National Games, and Ramita Jindal, who was a part of the Indian squad in the Paris Olympics and also was in the finals in the 10-meter rifle event in the Olympics, won bronze medal at the National Games. Ramita, a very warm welcome. You won bronze here at the National Games, and it was a stiff challenge, stiff competition here at the National Games too. What's your take on the competition here at the National Games?
I think it was a really fun competition, very high scoring finals, but that is what it makes fun. So I really enjoyed the finals and I'm glad I was able to secure bronze for my state.
And in the qualification you broke the world record. and yesterday was a fantastic day. You broke world record there, and here finishing third.
So I think in finals it's almost about the single shot. So, and I don't think so I played bad, but the other shooters did really very well. So I did my best, and a few shots were smaller than a tenth, and that may cost me away from the gold medal. So, but I think it was a really great finals, and I'll keep on working on the things I need to work on.
And talking about the future targets.
Yeah, we have World Championships upcoming, and I'll definitely aim for the World Championships and upcoming more international medals.
So definitely, Ramita here won bronze medal, and the way we can say that consistently she is performing at all the levels, hoping that in future too she will win more medals for the India at the international podiums. With camera person Manmohan, Narayan Singh, DD India, Dehradun.
Maharashtra's Arya Borse had a remarkable outing at the National Games as well. She won silver in the women's 10-meter air rifle event. In an exclusive chat with Narayan Singh, she shared her experience at the Games alongside her coach Manoj Kumar.
The shooting range in Dehradun during the National Game witnessed a tough competition, and here we witnessed Olympians and other shooters too, where the shooters like Ramita Jindal also played, who won bronze medal, and Arya Borse from Maharashtra won bronze medal, and right now I am joined by Arya and her coach Manoj. So how was the competition here where the rookie shooters and Olympians are participating together?
Actually, the competition was tough, definitely, and the feeling was very nice with playing the Olympian, and unfortunately something happened and I couldn't cover the gold medal, but yeah, definitely next time I'll hope.
The way, as you mentioned, that Arya is training at the Kearney Singh shooting range in Delhi, and she is a promising shooter. What's the special about Arya?
She's very strong mentally and very cool athlete. Like whatever you said to her for a technical, it's effect same time, and she follow. Like I asked her, just keep your focused, like keep your eye quiet, and she just follow the same time. I mentioned this today because I didn't mention this particular techniques during the qualification, because I know she's very strong in qualification. So I want that small information goes to the athlete's minds on the time she required. And she did, and she followed well.
Arya, talking about the overall experience.
All right, there's been a slight delay, but let me now take you across to my colleague Ajay Mishra, who will be speaking live with Chief Economic Advisor V. Anant Nageswaran on the major highlights of the Economic Survey 2025 and the upcoming Union Budget. Ajay.
धन्यवाद गौतम। और इस वक्त हम जुड़ रहे हैं सीधे जो मुख्य आर्थिक सलाहकार हैं भारत सरकार में वी अनंत नागेश्वरन जी, जो कि आर्थिक समीक्षा को जिन्होंने लिखा और आर्थिक समीक्षा संसद में पेश की जा चुकी है, और हमारे साथ डीडी नेटवर्क पर जुड़ने के लिए सर आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद। आप ही की अगुवाई में आपकी बहुत ही खूबसूरत टीम हमने देखा कि आज उनका आपने परिचय कराया, और सबसे विश्वसनीय दस्तावेज जिसे माना जाता है भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था का लेखा जोखा, भारत के अर्थव्यवस्था के सामने जो चुनौतियां हैं। आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं सर?
I can't hear.
ओके। एक बार फिर से कोशिश करते हैं। क्या मेरी आवाज आप तक पहुंच रही है सर? मैं स्टूडियो से अजय मिश्र बोल रहा हूं।
No, I can hear you, but there is so much of background noise on your side.
Okay, sir. So maybe the lag, the time lag is disturbing us, sir. So I'll try and put it.
No, not time lag. There is some other DD. What is some other news that is coming from your studio?
Okay, sir. We'll try to sort it out, sir. As soon as possible. मुझे लगता है गौतम, जो आज जो इकोनॉमिक सर्वे रखा गया है वो एक देश की अर्थव्यवस्था का एक आईना है, और हम इस बात को थोड़ा सा आगे बढ़ाते हैं। मैं आपको बताना चाहता हूँ कि इकोनॉमिक सर्वे है जो कि 2024-25 का है। नॉर्मली बजट जो आता है वो अगले साल के लिए आता है, इकोनॉमिक सर्वे जो मौजूदा वर्ष होता है उसका होता है, और ये सबसे विश्वसनीय दस्तावेज होता है भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था का। अलग अलग सेक्टर्स में क्या कुछ चल रहा होता है और एक इंडिपेंडेंट व्यू माना जाता है, क्योंकि जो मुख्य आर्थिक सलाहकार होते हैं वो इकोनॉमिस्ट तो होते हैं, उनकी जो पूरी टीम होती है वो इकोनॉमिस्ट्स की होती है और वो कोशिश करते हैं कि अलग अलग सेक्टर्स की जाकर के समीक्षा करें, उनके जो चैलेंजेस हैं उनको देश के सामने रखें और सिफारिशें करें। तो ये इंडिपेंडेंट सिफारिशें मानी जाती हैं। गवर्नमेंट से इसका सीधा लेना देना नीतियों के तौर पर नहीं होता है, लेकिन ये कहा जा सकता है कि बजट में और आर्थिक समीक्षा में कोई ना कोई कोरिलेशन ज़रूर देखने को मिलता है, क्योंकि जो भी सिफारिशें की जाती हैं, जो वास्तविकताएं हैं भारत की अर्थव्यवस्था की, उसको ध्यान में रख करके की जाती हैं। दैट्स व्हाई इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट एंड वन ऑफ द मोस्ट क्रेडिबल डॉक्यूमेंट which is put before the parliament right before the presentation of union budget for the next year.
Ji, bilkul Ajay, it is most certainly that, and it also gives a track of how the economy is done, all the measures that were required to be put in place to ensure that there is a continuance in terms of the way the track of the economy has been set by the finance minister itself in the previous budget speech. It sort of assesses, right? Doesn't it assess what has been done to ensure that progress is made on those fronts?
बिल्कुल, मुझे लगता है कि मुझे याद आता है पिछले साल का इकोनॉमिक सर्वे गौतम, और उसमें कहा गया बुनियादी ढांचे पर यानी इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर फोकस बहुत जरूरी है। हमने देखा कि 11,11,111 करोड़ रुपए का इन्वेस्टमेंट बुनियादी ढांचे पर दिखाई दिया था। एक और भी मुझे
आपकी पैरेलल न्यूज़ चल रही है।
ओके सर, एक बार फिर से कंफर्मेशन चाहते हैं आपसे, क्या आपको मेरी स्टूडियो की आवाज मिल रही है? डीडी इंडिया से मैं अजय मिश्र बोल रहा हूं इस वक्त, क्या आप मुझे सुन पा रहे हैं क्लियर?
Yeah, I'm able to hear you now better.
थैंक यू सर। तो एक बार फिर से आपका स्वागत है सर, और जिस तरह से हम कह रहे हैं कि आर्थिक समीक्षा 2024-25 की रखी जा चुकी है और आपकी अगुवाई में ये आर्थिक समीक्षा लिखी गई है। सबसे पहले अच्छी खबर से के साथ शुरुआत करते हैं सर, और अभी भी भारत सबसे तेज रफ्तार अर्थव्यवस्था पूरी दुनिया में बना हुआ है, लेकिन इस साल के लिए और अगले साल के लिए आपने 7% से कम विकास दर का जो लक्ष्य रखा है सर, इस अनुमान को लेकर के आपका क्या कहना है? क्या ये आपके लिए चिंता का विषय है?
There's nothing to worry about. That is, it's not because of some concerns that I have about India's GDP growth that I'm projecting a number below 7%. It is just a recognition of global reality. Geopolitics and geoeconomics are in flux. They are moving from one equilibrium which we were used to. There is a lot of uncertainty, and global investment flows and global export and trade flows are going to be more challenging in the coming years. This is just a recognition of that, and India still remains a fast-growing economy among the world's largest economies, and that I think there's no change there. So these forecasts do not necessarily reflect concerns or worries, but they are a reflection of the global reality today. Back to you.
सर, चूंकि इस पूरी आर्थिक समीक्षा में 13 चैप्टर्स हैं और अगर प्रीफेस मिला लें तो 14 हो जाते हैं, और अभी महाकुंभ चल रहा है, उसमें 14 रत्नों की बात हम लोग कहते हैं। प्रधानमंत्री ने आज माँ लक्ष्मी को नमन किया। उन्होंने कहा कि सिद्धि बुद्धि प्रदे देवी भुक्ति मुक्ति प्रदायिनी मंत्र मूर्ति सदा देवी महालक्ष्मी नमोस्तुते, आज बजट सत्र की शुरुआत में। और चूंकि लक्ष्मी का संबंध सीधे बैंकिंग सेक्टर वित्तीय व्यवस्था से होता है, तो आपका दूसरा चैप्टर जो है उस पर मैं सीधे सीधे आपसे सवाल करना चाहता हूं सर। एज चीफ इकोनॉमिक एडवाइजर, इंटरेस्ट रेट की पोजीशन आपको इस साल क्या दिखाई दे रही है? क्योंकि हमने देखा बिल्कुल कांस्टेंट 11 बार से 12 बार से हमने बिल्कुल उसमें कोई भी चेंज नहीं देखा है सर।
Mr. Ji, I normally do not comment on interest rates in public. I leave it to the central bank. I leave it to the Reserve Bank of India. Some of these conversations, if we do them privately, they will be more effective than if we were to do those conversations through a public medium. So I will not comment, and please accept my apologies. I don't want to comment on interest rate policy in a public forum.
आई अंडरस्टैंड सर, बट चूंकि इन्फ्लेशन और इंटरेस्ट रेट का सीधे संबंध होता है, और आपने वित्तीय अर्थव्यवस्था को आपने बदला कि जो इकोनॉमिक स्टेबिलिटी है, फाइनेंशियल स्टेबिलिटी है, कैपिटल मार्केट है, वो बहुत ही वाइब्रेंट है। इसलिए मैंने सवाल किया कि शायद क्या कुछ गुड न्यूज हमें मिल सकती है। एनीवे सर, हम आगे बढ़ते हैं। आपने तीसरा चैप्टर सर रखा है एक्सपोर्ट्स पे सर। एक्सपोर्ट्स में हम कैसे कॉम्पिटिटिव बना सकते हैं अपने देश की इकॉनमी को, कैसे हम प्रोडक्ट डाइवर्सिफिकेशन कर सकते हैं, कैसे हम ज़्यादा FDI ले आ सकते हैं, इसके लिए आपके recommendations क्या हैं सर?
Sure. Multiple things need to be done, and it is difficult to go through all of them in a small conversations like this. It is starting with ultimately exports are a function of labor productivity, investment in technology, and the speed with which we are able to bring investments into production, and finally how the policy framework and the regulatory system allow businesses to scale and create efficiencies in production. So these elements combine to make us competitive. Of course, people will talk about exchange rate policy, etc., but those are somewhat supplementary in nature. The real issues have to do with productivity, efficiency, innovation, quality, and that also relies a lot on the quality and the skill levels of the labor force in the economy. And deregulation is going to be an important part of it, because it is going to bring down the cost of operations, make companies and enterprises more productive, and that is how we slowly develop export competitiveness. India has done well. I mean, in the last decade, our merchandise export growth was in the region of between $280 to $300 billion per year. Now we are heading towards $450 billion, and services will be about another 300. So probably in the course of this financial year itself, we may cross $800 billion of total exports of goods and services. So things are happening, but I think we can do more. And whatever good things we have been doing have been paying dividends. And it is time to raise our game to a newer level, because in the meantime, the global environment has become that much more difficult. And that is the message from the chapter on external sector.
बिल्कुल सही कहा सर आपने। और जिस तरह से हमने $2 ट्रिलियन के एक्सपोर्ट का लक्ष्य रखा है, सर्विसेज और मैन्युफैक्चरिंग करके हम मिला लें तो शायद आपके रिकमेंडेशंस उस दिशा में काफ़ी इंपॉर्टेंट हो जाते हैं। अब सिर्फ मैं इन्फ्लेशन चैप्टर पर आता हूं। इन्फ्लेशन में आपने कहा कि 2022 में जो हमने पीक देखा था वहां से बहुत हमें रिलीफ मिला है। अब हम जो हमारा रेंज है 4 to 6% के बिल्कुल करीब है सर। लेकिन आपने कुछ लॉन्ग टर्म सोल्यूशंस भी सुझाए हैं सर, फॉर एग्जांपल ऑयल सीड्स के लिए, पल्सेस के प्रोडक्शन के लिए। तो प्राइस स्टेबलाइजेशन के लिए आपका क्या सोल्यूशन है, अगर हम लॉन्ग टर्म में प्राइस स्टेबिलिटी को ध्यान में रखें सर?
It's 5 towards the 4% next, especially prices be so as has been partly because of investment we have the last on infrastructure, improving supply potential, bringing down the cost of handling port hand, reducing cost and reducing the weight in across the highways, etc. All these things are adding to cost efficiencies and in turn bringing down inflation rates in general. The more and more we are able to insulate our agriculture sector as well from the vagaries of climate, heat waves and excess rainfall, etc., and allow farmers to receive price signals more effectively, then farm sector productivity will rise, and much of the prices realized from consumers will go directly to farmers, and that can still enable farmers to earn well, at the same time keep retail prices low, and inflation will also come down closer to our target of 4% while remaining less volatile and more stable. All this is possible through a combination of liberalization of the agriculture sector and also efficiencies in the non-agricultural sector. But we are on the right track with respect to bringing down the overall inflation rate in the economy, because our average inflation rates have been cut in the last 3 years.
सर दिस इज अ बिग स्टेटमेंट, बट चूंकि आपने फिजिकल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पर भी एक चैप्टर लिखा है और डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर में थोड़ी सी दिक्कतें आ रही हैं आपके ऑडियो लेवल को लेकर के, हमें स्टूडियो तक मिलने में थोड़ी सी इनकंसिस्टेंट ऑडियो है। पर मैं आपको प्रॉमिस करता हूं सर कि मैं एक चैप्टर से सिर्फ एक सवाल कर रहा हूं, और चूंकि आपने केवल 15 मिनट मुझे दिए हैं तो मैं अब अगले चैप्टर की तरफ बढ़ता हूं, और वो है डीरेगुलेशन का। शायद सभी लोग इसी चैप्टर पे सबसे ज़्यादा बात कर रहे हैं सर। आपने कहा है कि 8 to 10% हमें चाहिए विकसित भारत को बनाने के लिए, लेकिन इसके लिए भारत को डीरेगुलेट करना ही होगा सर। क्या ये सेंटर के लिए मैसेज है, स्टेट्स के लिए है, दोनों के लिए है? इसका मतलब क्या है सर, थोड़ा समझाएं प्लीज।
So basically, we have set up over the last 70 years or 75 years since independence, we have set up a regulatory environment that is well-meaning, well-intentioned, but basically do not allow businesses to grow. There is a fear of growth, and that is because we want to make sure that not a single business entity or individual basically evades rules and regulations and taxes, etc. So we have built an elaborate network of inspection and compliances in many areas. And we also prescribe in a very, very micro manner all these rules and regulations, whether it is building codes, whether it is road width, whether it is fire inspection, and whether it is about paying overtime and weekly hours of work, etc. So all these things have basically constricted the freedom that small and medium enterprises or micro enterprises have to be able to grow without the fear of growth. The more they grow, the more costs they encounter in their businesses because of intrusive regulations. That is why the message is that we basically allow our businesses and ordinary households, we give them back their time and mental bandwidth so that they can concentrate on growing the business, scaling up, and hiring more people. And this is the way we will create a viable small and medium enterprise sector. We will boost the manufacturing share of GDP, create more jobs, and it becomes a virtuous circle. So deregulation holds a lot of potential for placing the economy in a higher growth orbit, and that is what chapter 5 is about. We have given some specific areas. Right, obviously, sir, once you start doing in one area, it will also open up the possibility to deregulate in other areas, and it becomes a virtuous circle in itself. And as you correctly said, it is necessary to do so in both center and state governments, both areas. There are different departments and ministries, certification agencies, which need to deregulate. It is not, at the same time, I'm not saying that nothing has been done. On the contrary, a lot has been done. Right, sir. But given that we have a 75-year history of accumulating rules and regulations, inspections and compliances, we still have a long road to cross as well. And that is the message of the chapter 5 which you spoke about.
बिल्कुल सही कहा सर आपने, और 1500 से ज़्यादा पुराने कानूनों को खत्म किया गया, जिसका बार बार लगातार कोशिश करते हैं। अब सर आते हैं बुनियादी ढांचे पर, जो कि आपका छठा चैप्टर है। ईयर आफ्टर ईयर, सीएज आफ्टर सीएज, सभी लोगों ने फिजिकल, सोशल और डिजिटल इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को मजबूत करने पर बात की, लेकिन पिछले हमने 3-4 सालों में देखा कि रियल कैपेक्स में बढ़ोतरी देखी गई है इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर को लेकर सर। लेकिन ये कितने सालों तक करना जरूरी होगा सर? 10 साल, 15 साल, 20 साल? इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर का फोकस कैसे रहेगा सर? और हमने देखा इलेक्शंस की वजह से हम पूरा पैसा खर्च नहीं कर पाए। अगले साल के लिए मैसेज क्या होगा सर?
I think by the 7 years, one of it has by 3 to 4 times, and the fruits of that spending are evident in the number of airports, the kind of railway network we have, the connectivity we have to different parts of the country, northeast, from Kashmir to Kanyakumari railway lines, and we have metro rails, and then also commuter rails, and generation capacities, both renewable and fossil fuel generation, and digital expenditure, physical space in several sectors. But for it is possible for public sector, it can be a joint initiative. Space even more to spend that as
Sir, I would request the team, their technical team, to kindly work on the audio issues. And meanwhile, I am trying to put my next question to you, which is very important from the point of view of R&D, because you have said that the gross expenditure on the research and development in India, though it has increased a lot, 1.27 lakh crore rupees in 2021, if I'm not wrong, but it's just 0.64% of the GDP, while in China it is more than 2%. तो सर कैसे हम इसको करेक्ट करेंगे और क्यों हमारे यहाँ गूगल और अमेजन जैसी कंपनीज नहीं आती हैं जो कि 70% ऑफ R&D में इन्वेस्टमेंट करती हैं? मैं आपके ही बॉक्सेस से ये सवाल उठा करके ले आया हूँ सर। तो R&D में कैसे निजी क्षेत्र को ज़्यादा हमें अट्रैक्ट करने की ज़रूरत होगी कि बड़ी कंपनीज आएँ और यहाँ पर R&D में इन्वेस्ट करें?
I think not everything can be achieved only or should be achieved only through policy intervention, because policy support to R&D in India is not negligible. We are comparable to many other countries in terms of the incentives we give for R&D in our policy framework. And I think it's also a question of mindset, it's a question of horizons, and also a question of interest and aptitude and capabilities in academia, etc. And also the kind of reward and incentive systems we have within our academic establishments and in the business sector for research and development, the tendency to view R&D as an expenditure and not as an investment. All these things have to change. Some of them may be set right by policy, and some of them may need a different approach and thinking process, which is once again is what the economic survey's purpose is all about. It is about understanding that the global context has changed, and therefore there is a need for businesses, academia, and the government to change the way in which they have been functioning in the last several decades, because we are now facing a different world than what we were used to in the last 30 to 40 years. And a new approach to R&D is part of the answer.
सर मैं क्वेश्चंस को और छोटा करता हूं। 8वां चैप्टर है सर्विस सेक्टर पे। सर्विस सेक्टर को ग्रोथ इंजन बनाए रखने के लिए हमें क्या करना होगा? क्या कुछ हमें नए सेक्टर्स पर फोकस करना होगा अगर हमें स्टिल इंडियन सर्विस सेक्टर को मेजरली कंट्रीब्यूटर बनाए रखना है इंडियन इकोनॉमी में?
Sure. I mean, tourism sector comes to mind. We have not fully tapped the potential of tourism. It's a service sector, which includes medical tourism as well. And then education. India can actually become a huge center for education for many students from Africa and different parts of Asia as well. So when we think of services, we think of information technology. But there are several other areas. Like just for example, India is able to create so many nurses, and we are able to provide human resources to in nursing to aging societies in West Asia, in Europe, etc. So there are multiple areas in which we can grow. Geriatric care, mental health counseling, all these are all service sectors. And these sectors will not be, and these areas in particular will not be threatened by technology. And these are the areas in which we should think about growing services in the future. Back to you.
Sir, agriculture को आपने फ्यूचर सेक्टर क्यों बोला? सेक्टर ऑफ द फ्यूचर क्यों बोला? और खेती बाड़ी में विकास में आपने कहा जीडीपी में 0.5 से 1% का एडिशनल कंट्रीब्यूशन कर सकता है सर, लेकिन आपने जो रिफॉर्म सुझाए हैं सर वो तो कानून बने थे, उसको वापस लेना पड़ा दबाव में। अब हम आगे कैसे बढ़ेंगे सर?
I mean, we deliberately call it the sector of the future simply because usually economic textbooks will tell you that agriculture is something that contributes to GDP growth much more when in early stage of development. But we are arguing that given that manufacturing, we face a lot of competition from many countries, including China, particularly from China. And when it comes to services, maybe technology will make many of the current services redundant. Therefore, we should look at agriculture with a fresh pair of eyes. And whatever is happening in agriculture, allied services, dairy, fisheries, horticulture, fruits and flowers, even grapes in wine production, etc. Right. Some of those success stories can be replicated in traditional crops and food grains, cotton, sugarcane, rice, wheat, etc. If those things happen, then the contribution of agriculture to GDP growth can go up by 0.5 to 1%. And that is what both the July 2024 survey and this survey underscore.
सर मुझे याद आता है G20 में आपने बहुत ही मजबूती के साथ एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन के मुद्दे को भारत के पक्ष को रखा था, और अब 10वें चैप्टर पे मैं आता हूँ। एनर्जी ट्रांजिशन का भारत का अपना मॉडल क्या होना चाहिए और हमें किस ओर आगे बढ़ना है सर?
So the model that India needs for energy transition is that we need to focus on adaptation. We need to expand the scope of renewable energy to include nuclear energy. And we need to be strategically conscious of the dependence on single source when we talk about solar power and when we talk about e-mobility, and more importantly, a use of public transportation, making it easier and facilitating its use is also an important part of energy transition. And more importantly, we need to invest in adaptation rather than focusing on doing energy transition with only one eye on emission mitigation. And that is the message we have in the economic survey with respect to energy transition.
सर अब मैं आता हूं सोशल सेक्टर पे। ये चैप्टर सबसे बड़ा है, आपने 60 पेजेस दिए हैं इसको, बाकी सारे चैप्टर से ज़्यादा दिया है इसको। ऐसा क्यों किया आपने? और इसमें राज्य सरकारों की भी बहुत बड़ी भूमिका होती है, चाहे हेल्थ हो, एजुकेशन हो या दूसरे सोशल सर्विस सेक्टर्स हो। कैसे हम इसको लेकर के आगे बढ़ेंगे सर, और आपकी लार्जर मैसेजिंग क्या है इस पूरे चैप्टर को लेकर के?
I think a couple of days ago we had the annual state of education report from Pratham, which talks about improvement in reading and numerical skills, which are some of the initiatives taken by the government on foundational literacy and numeracy FLN programs. And this chapter is about covering practices and successful efforts undertaken both by state governments and several not-for-profit initiatives. Government across the country, union and state, are spending more than 25 lakh crores on social sector. And some of them are beginning to yield results, as we saw in the Pratham survey post-COVID. But the purpose of this chapter is to showcase good stories that can be replicated across the country, and both happening in state governments and in the not-for-profit sector, and also talk about various initiatives, including mental health, which we need to focus on. Because going forward, India, given this large population, the focus is on the demographic bulge. But equally, the population of elderly in this country also will be growing quite rapidly. And therefore, elder care, mental health counseling, attention to consumption of ultra-processed foods, which have an implication for both physical and mental health. And therefore, in terms of education, how to free up education from, again, a deregulation angle. All these things are covered in the chapter in the social sector.
सर अब मैं आता हूं स्किल डेवलपमेंट एम्प्लॉयमेंट पर, जिसकी बात बहुत सारे लोगों ने आपसे की होगी। लेकिन भारत को स्किल कैपिटल वर्ल्ड का बनाने के लिए क्या किया जाना चाहिए, और वो कौन से सनराइज सेक्टर्स हैं जो लगता है आपको कि स्किल डेवलपमेंट और एम्प्लॉयमेंट के लिहाज से अगले दशक में, अगले 2-20 सालों में हमारे सामने आने वाले हैं?
When it comes to skill development, in the last economic survey, so India needs to create about jobs here, skilling initiatives, compensation scheme, then specific training initiative, incentives, apprenticeship. All these things are the initiatives we need so that additional. So that is we need to pursue. So this is to the private sector and academia, particularly between private sector and academia, in terms of the requirements, what the industry needs and what academia requires. When it comes to education, government can, around the country, in and state government, a lot. Really important on cost of doing, then
सर फाइनली एआई को लेकर के G20 के दौरान आपने कहा जनरेटिव एआई पूरे ग्लोबल ग्रोथ को 1.5% का पुश दे सकती है। एआई वाकई हमारे लिए क्राइसिस है या कैटलिस्ट? लास्ट चैप्टर आपका क्या मैसेजिंग है, और कैसे हमें एआई को अपने खुद के भारत के विकास के लिए इस्तेमाल करना चाहिए, हमारा इंडियन मॉडल ऑफ यूजिंग एआई?
So the messaging of that chapter is simple. We need to be mindful of deploying AI given India's large youth population, and we need to prepare them to be able to handle AI Or at the same time, when we introduce AI, we need to find ways to absorb labor in other areas and also create enabling institutions to be able to compensate the labor from the impact of technology where labor displacement is inevitable. Where it is not inevitable, effort should be made to augment labor with technology rather than replace labor, and wherever possible, absorb labor in different areas by taking on more business, etc. Basically, AI should not be seen as a labor displacement device, which may be all right for developed countries because they have an aging society. India is a youthful society and it's a large country with a large population. Therefore, our attitude to AI must come with awareness of social responsibility. That is the message in that chapter.
सर बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद, मेरे पास वक्त इतना ही है और आपका शुक्रिया और आपकी टीम का बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया कि आपने इतना हमें समय दिया। लेकिन आर्थिक समीक्षा के बाद भी बजट पर आपकी रिएक्शंस का हमें इंतजार रहेगा। बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
थैंक यू।
तो आपने देखा
That's all we have for this edition of DD India NewsHour, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. And for those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India's mobile app. It's available on both Android and iOS. You can scan the QR code on the screen and download the app right away. And we'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Gautam Roy, and from all of us here in Delhi, thanks for watching DD India NewsHour.